The world is not a playground where fairness rules. It is a chessboard where every move matters, every emotion reveals weakness, and every hierarchy demands a master. You have been taught to believe that emotions make you human, that vulnerability creates connection, that showing your feelings builds trust. These are the lies that keep you at the bottom of every social structure you enter. The truth is harsher and infinitely more useful. Emotions are weapons, and those who master them control everything. Strategic emotional control is not about becoming a machine. It is about becoming the puppet master while others dance to strings they cannot see. In every office, every social circle, every relationship, there exists an invisible hierarchy. Most people stumble through it blindly, reacting, responding, revealing their hand with every outburst, every plea, every moment of weakness. But you are about to learn something different. You are about to discover how to climb to the top of any social structure by controlling not just your own emotions, but by manipulating the emotions of everyone around you. This is not about cruelty for its own sake. This is about survival in a world that rewards the strategic and devours the naive. When you master strategic emotional control, you become untouchable. People cannot manipulate what they cannot read. They cannot control what remains steady when everything else shakes. They cannot defeat what refuses to break. Most people are emotional slaves. They wake up and their mood depends on a text message, a look from a colleague, a comment from a stranger. Their day is hijacked by every slight, every criticism, every moment when someone fails to validate their existence. They are puppets, and everyone around them holds the strings. Their anger can be triggered with a single word. Their insecurity surfaces with one pointed question. Their desperation shows when they chase approval like addicts chasing their next fix. You see this everywhere. The manager who explodes when questioned, revealing that his authority is built on fragile ego rather than competence. The colleague who crumbles when criticized, showing everyone that she can be broken with minimal effort. The friend who becomes jealous and possessive the moment you succeed, exposing that his loyalty was conditional on your failure. These people broadcast their weaknesses like radio signals, and anyone with strategic intelligence can tune in and exploit them. But strategic emotional control flips this dynamic entirely. When you master your emotional responses, you become the one holding the strings. You become the calm center around which chaos revolves. People begin to orbit around your stability, seeking your approval, fearing your judgment, wondering what you are thinking. This is not accident. This is architecture. The first principle of strategic emotional control is emotional opacity. Your emotions must become invisible to others while their emotions remain transparent to you. Think of it as one-way glass. You see everything, they see nothing. When someone insults you, your face remains unchanged. When someone tries to provoke you, your voice stays level. When someone attempts to manipulate you through guilt, anger, or fear, you absorb it without reaction, like a stone absorbing rain. This opacity creates mystery, and mystery creates power. People fear what they cannot predict. They respect what they cannot shake. When others realize that their usual tactics, their emotional manipulation, their attempts to rattle you, have no effect, they begin to see you differently. You are no longer just another person in their social world. You become a force they must navigate around. But emotional opacity is only the beginning. The true mastery comes in emotional orchestration, the ability to create, direct, and control the emotions of others while remaining detached yourself. This is where most people fail to understand the deeper game. They think power comes from being the loudest voice in the room, the most aggressive presence, the one who dominates through force. This is amateur thinking. Real power comes from being the conductor of an orchestra where everyone else plays the instruments. Consider how this works in practice. You are in a meeting where tensions are high. Others are arguing, voices rising, emotions spilling everywhere. The amateur tries to shout louder, to dominate through volume and aggression. The strategist does something different. He remains calm, speaks quietly, and asks a single question that reframes the entire discussion. Suddenly, everyone is looking to him for guidance. He has become the center of gravity not through force, but through control. Or imagine you are dealing with someone who is trying to undermine you through gossip and social manipulation. The emotional response would be to confront them directly, to argue, to defend yourself publicly. This is exactly what they want. Conflict feeds their strategy. Instead, the master of emotional control does something more sophisticated. He remains pleasant and professional on the surface while systematically isolating his opponent. He asks innocent questions that make others doubt the gossiper's credibility. He shares information that subtly undermines their position. He never appears to be attacking, yet his opponent finds their influence slowly evaporating. This is the art of emotional jujitsu. You use their emotional energy against them while conserving your own. They exhaust themselves in anger, frustration, and desperation, while you remain fresh, calculating, always 3 moves ahead. They reveal their strategies through their emotions, while your plans remain hidden behind a mask of calm professionalism. The second principle is emotional intelligence as reconnaissance. Most people use emotional intelligence to build empathy and connection. This is useful, but it barely scratches the surface of what is possible. When you truly understand how emotions work, you can read people like books. Every micro-expression, every change in tone, every shift in body language tells you something about their internal state, their fears, their desires, their weaknesses. You begin to see patterns. The colleague who always agrees in meetings but never follows through is driven by conflict avoidance and low self-esteem. The boss who micromanages everything is motivated by deep insecurity about his own competence. The friend who constantly seeks attention through drama is addicted to feeling important. Once you see these patterns, you can predict behavior. And when you can predict behavior, you can shape it. This reconnaissance allows you to speak to people's deepest motivations without them realizing what you are doing. The insecure boss needs to feel smart and in control. You feed this need by asking for his advice, by positioning your ideas as extensions of his vision, by making him feel like the architect of successes you actually orchestrated. He promotes you not because you are the most qualified, but because being around you makes him feel powerful and validated. The attention-seeking friend needs to feel special and important. You give her exclusive information, ask for her opinions on personal matters, make her feel like your trusted confidant. She becomes fiercely loyal not because of friendship, but because you feed her psychological addiction. She will defend you, support you, and share information about others because maintaining her special status with you becomes her priority. This is not manipulation in the crude sense. This is strategic relationship management. You are giving people what they psychologically need while ensuring that their satisfaction serves your interests. Everyone wins, but you win more. They get their emotional needs met. You get loyalty, information, and support. The difference is that you are conscious of the dynamic while they are simply enjoying the feeling. The third principle is emotional leverage. Every person you encounter has emotional pressure points, psychological buttons that, when pressed, create predictable responses. The master of strategic emotional control maps these pressure points like a general maps enemy fortifications. He knows exactly where to apply pressure to achieve specific outcomes. Some people are motivated by fear. They respond to subtle implications that their security, status, or relationships might be at risk. You do not threaten them directly, that would be crude and obvious. Instead, you share stories about what happened to others who made similar choices. You ask innocent questions about their backup plans. You express concern about industry trends that might affect their position. Their imagination does the rest, creating anxiety that motivates them to seek your guidance and protection. Others are motivated by pride and ego. They need to feel superior, intelligent, special. You feed this need by positioning them as experts, by seeking their advice, by making them feel like mentors and leaders. But you do it strategically, guiding their ego-driven decisions toward outcomes that serve your interests. They feel powerful and important while actually serving your agenda. Still others are motivated by belonging and acceptance. They fear being excluded, criticized, or rejected by the group. You can influence them by controlling their access to social validation. Your approval becomes valuable currency. Your inclusion in social activities becomes a reward they work to earn. Your subtle expressions of disappointment become punishments they work to avoid. The key is calibration. You must read each person accurately and adjust your approach accordingly. What motivates one person will be irrelevant to another. What pressures one person will bounce off another. This is why emotional intelligence as reconnaissance is so crucial. You cannot apply leverage effectively until you understand the internal machinery you are trying to influence. The fourth principle is emotional contagion management. Emotions spread through groups like viruses. Most people catch whatever emotional disease is circulating around them. They walk into an anxious room and become anxious. They join a pessimistic conversation and become pessimistic. They are infected by the emotional climate and then spread that infection to others. The strategically minded person does the opposite. He becomes a source of emotional influence rather than a victim of emotional contagion. He enters an anxious room and radiates calm, gradually shifting the entire atmosphere. He joins a chaotic discussion and introduces clarity and focus, becoming the center around which order forms. He does not catch emotions from others, he transmits emotions to others. This requires tremendous self-discipline. You must build emotional firewalls that prevent other people's psychological states from contaminating your own. When someone is angry, you remain calm. When someone is desperate, you remain composed. When someone is excited, you remain measured. You become the emotional thermostat for every environment you enter. But managing emotional contagion is not just about defense, it is about offense. You can deliberately introduce emotions into a group dynamic to achieve specific outcomes. You want people to feel confident about a project you are leading, so you radiate quiet confidence and certainty. You want people to feel concerned about a competitor's proposal, so you introduce subtle notes of skepticism and caution. You want people to feel excited about an opportunity, so you share carefully chosen details that spark curiosity and ambition. The master of this art can walk into a room and within minutes shift the entire emotional landscape in directions that serve his purposes. People leave feeling differently than when they arrived, but they attribute these feelings to the situation, the information shared, or their own insights. They never realize that their emotions were deliberately cultivated by someone who understood exactly what he was doing. The fifth principle is strategic vulnerability. This might seem contradictory to everything we have discussed, but it is actually one of the most sophisticated tools in the arsenal. Vulnerability, when used strategically, creates powerful bonds and disarms potential threats. The key word is strategic. This is not the uncontrolled emotional spillage that weakens most people. This is calculated disclosure designed to achieve specific outcomes. Strategic vulnerability works because it triggers reciprocity and creates the illusion of intimacy. When you share something personal with someone, they feel special and trusted. This creates psychological debt. They feel obligated to reciprocate with their own disclosures, giving you valuable information about their motivations, fears, and weaknesses. It also makes them feel connected to you, building loyalty and reducing the likelihood that they will work against your interests, but strategic vulnerability must be carefully controlled. You share selected weaknesses that make you seem human and relatable without actually compromising your position. You might share a story about a past failure that demonstrates how you learned and grew stronger. You might admit to being nervous about a presentation while simultaneously showing how you prepare and perform despite the nerves. You might confess to caring deeply about the team's success, positioning your ambition as selfless dedication. The emotions you reveal must serve your strategic interests. Sharing that you sometimes doubt yourself can make you seem humble and self-aware. Sharing that you worry about letting people down can make you seem caring and responsible. Sharing that you get frustrated with incompetence can make you seem dedicated to excellence. Each disclosure is chosen to create a specific impression and generate a desired response. Strategic vulnerability also serves as camouflage. When people see you display certain emotions in controlled circumstances, they assume they understand your emotional landscape. They think they have seen behind your mask, when in reality you have simply shown them a different, equally constructed facade. This false intimacy makes them less likely to look for your real motivations and methods. The sixth principle is emotional Aikido, the art of redirecting emotional energy rather than opposing it directly. When someone comes at you with anger, frustration, or hostility, The natural response is to meet force with force, to defend, argue, or counterattack. This is exactly what they expect, and it is exactly what serves their purposes. Conflict energizes them and gives them something to fight against. Emotional Aikido takes their energy and redirects it in directions that serve your interests. Someone is angry about a decision you made. Instead of defending the decision, you acknowledge their feelings and redirect their energy towards solving the underlying problem. You might say something like, "I can see this is really important to you. Help me understand what outcome would work better." Suddenly, instead of attacking you, they are working with you to find solutions. Someone is trying to make you feel guilty about not doing something they want. Instead of accepting the guilt or rejecting it defensively, you redirect the conversation toward mutual benefit. You might respond with, "I want to make sure I am focusing my energy where it will be most helpful. What are the most important priorities from your perspective?" Now, instead of manipulating you through guilt, they are helping you understand how to allocate your resources strategically. Someone is attempting to provoke you into an emotional reaction through insults or criticism. Instead of taking the bait, you treat their hostility as information about their own psychological state. You might respond with genuine curiosity. "You seem really frustrated about something. Is there something specific that is bothering you?" This transforms you from a target into a counselor, completely shifting the power dynamic. Emotional Aikido requires you to remain centered and calm regardless of what energy is being directed. Toward you, you become like water, flowing around obstacles rather than crashing against them. This is incredibly disarming because most people are prepared for resistance, not redirection. They come ready for a fight and find themselves in a conversation. They come ready to attack and find themselves being understood. The seventh principle is strategic emotional timing. Emotions have rhythms, and these rhythms can be predicted and exploited. People are more receptive to certain ideas when they are in certain emotional states. They make different decisions when they are tired versus energized, stressed versus relaxed, confident versus insecure. The emotional strategist learns to read these rhythms and time his moves accordingly. You want to ask for a promotion or raise. You do not do this when your boss is stressed about quarterly numbers or dealing with a crisis. You wait until he is feeling successful and confident, perhaps after a major win or positive feedback from his superiors. You want to introduce a controversial idea to your team. You do not do this when morale is low or people are feeling defensive. You wait until the group is feeling cohesive and optimistic, perhaps after a successful project completion. You want to have a difficult conversation with someone. You do not initiate this when they are already emotional or defensive. You wait until they are calm and receptive, perhaps after they have had a good day or received positive news. You want to negotiate a deal or agreement. You time this for when the other party is feeling pressure to close, perhaps near the end of their fiscal period or when they are facing competitive threats. Strategic timing also applies to your own emotional expressions. You do not show enthusiasm randomly. You show it when doing so will inspire others or build momentum behind your initiatives. You do not express concern arbitrarily. You express it when doing so will motivate people to take necessary precautions or make important changes. You do not display disappointment casually. You display it when doing so will communicate that standards have not been met and performance must improve. Every emotional expression becomes a tool used at precisely the right moment to achieve maximum impact. This requires patience and discipline. You must often wait for the right conditions rather than acting on impulse or convenience. But this patience pays enormous dividends because well-timed emotional moves are exponentially more effective than poorly timed ones. The eighth principle is emotional intelligence as competitive advantage. In most environments, emotional skills are dramatically underdeveloped. People operate on instinct, habit, and reaction rather than strategy and intention. They are prisoners of their own emotional patterns, slaves to their triggers, and victims of their psychological blind spots. This creates enormous opportunities for those who approach emotions systematically and strategically. Think about your typical workplace, social gathering, or family dinner. How many people do you observe who have genuine mastery over their emotional responses? How many can remain calm under pressure, think clearly during conflict, or respond thoughtfully when provoked? The answer is very few. Most people are emotional amateurs operating in a world that demands emotional professionals. This widespread emotional illiteracy creates a massive competitive advantage for those willing to develop these skills. While others are being triggered by criticism, you remain composed and extract useful information from the feedback. While others are reacting defensively to challenges, you are responding thoughtfully and turning obstacles into opportunities. While others are revealing their weaknesses, insecurities, and pressure points through emotional outbursts, you are gathering intelligence, maintaining your strategic position, and planning your next moves with clarity and precision. This differential gives you massive advantages in negotiations, conflicts, relationship building, and leadership situations. In negotiations, while your counterpart is getting emotionally invested in winning or losing face, you remain focused on the actual outcomes that matter. You can read their emotional state, understand what they really need versus what they say they want, and structure deals that feel like victories for them while advancing your own objectives. In conflicts, while others escalate through anger, defensiveness, or hurt feelings, you de-escalate through understanding, reframing, and strategic concessions that cost you nothing but mean everything to them. You turn adversaries into allies by addressing their emotional needs while protecting your strategic interests. You resolve disputes that others cannot because you can see past the surface drama to the underlying psychological dynamics. In relationship building, while others are trying to impress, prove themselves, or seek validation, you are creating genuine connection by understanding what people actually value and need. You build trust not through grand gestures or promises, but through consistent emotional reliability and demonstrated understanding of human nature. People feel understood and valued in your presence because you actually do understand and value them strategically. In leadership situations, while others are managing through authority, intimidation, or charisma, you lead through psychological insight and emotional architecture. You create environments where people want to perform well, not because they fear consequences, but because you have structured the psychological incentives to align with productive behavior. You inspire loyalty not through manipulation, but through demonstrating that following your lead serves their deepest interests. You begin to see opportunities that others miss because their emotional reactions blind them to strategic possibilities. When everyone else is panicking during a crisis, you see the chances for advancement, alliance building, and problem solving that chaos creates. When others are celebrating during good times, you see the complacency and vulnerabilities that success often breeds. Your emotional equilibrium allows you to maintain strategic vision when others are lost in the emotional weather of the moment. You build alliances that others cannot because you understand what people really want and need beneath their stated positions and conscious desires. While others are trying to convince people through logic, argument, or pressure, you are creating psychological conditions where people convince themselves. You understand that lasting influence comes not from changing minds, but from understanding minds so well that you can present your ideas in ways that feel like natural conclusions rather than external impositions. You avoid traps that others fall into because you can see through emotional manipulation and misdirection. When someone tries to make you angry to cloud your judgment, you recognize the tactic and use it as information about their desperation or strategy. When someone attempts to guilt you into poor decisions, you understand the psychological mechanism and respond to their underlying need without sacrificing your position. When someone uses fear to pressure you into quick choices, you slow down the process and examine what they are afraid you might discover if given time to think. You influence outcomes that others cannot because you understand how to move people psychologically. You know that people are not convinced by facts alone, but by facts presented in emotionally resonant ways. You understand that lasting behavioral change comes not from external pressure, but from internal motivation that you can cultivate through strategic emotional engagement. You recognize that true influence is about helping people want what you need them to want, not forcing them to do what you need them to do. Over time, these advantages compound exponentially. People begin to see you as unusually wise, perceptive, and effective. They cannot quite articulate why conversations with you feel different, why conflicts seem to resolve more smoothly in your presence, or why projects run more successfully under your influence. They seek your counsel because your advice consistently proves valuable. They trust your judgment because your predictions about people and situations prove accurate. They support your initiatives because they have learned that your success often creates success for others. They do not fully understand why you seem to navigate social and professional situations so skillfully. They just know that you do. This mystery actually enhances your influence because people tend to attribute almost magical qualities to abilities they cannot understand or replicate. Your reputation becomes a powerful asset that opens doors, creates opportunities, and attracts high-quality people who want to be associated with someone who consistently generates positive outcomes. Your emotional mastery becomes a form of invisible authority that transcends formal hierarchies and official positions. People defer to you not because of your title or position, but because of your presence and demonstrated capability. They recognize that you operate from a different level of psychological sophistication, and they naturally look to that sophistication for guidance and direction. They trust you to handle difficult situations because you have repeatedly demonstrated that you remain effective under pressure, that you can think clearly when others are overwhelmed, and that you can find solutions when others see only problems. They look to you for leadership because you provide stability and direction when others are lost in emotional chaos, because you can see paths forward when others see only obstacles, and because you create calm confidence in environments of anxiety and uncertainty. The transformation from emotional reactivity to emotional mastery is not just about personal power, though you will certainly become more powerful. It is not just about professional advancement, though you will certainly advance more effectively. It is fundamentally about personal freedom and authentic self-determination. When you are no longer controlled by your emotions or manipulated by the emotions of others, you become truly autonomous. Your decisions are based on logic, strategy, and long-term thinking rather than impulse, fear, social pressure, or the desperate need for approval. You stop making choices to avoid discomfort and start making choices to create the outcomes you actually want. You stop being reactive and become genuinely proactive. You stop wasting enormous amounts of energy on emotional drama, interpersonal conflicts, and psychological chaos, and you redirect that energy toward building the life and career you actually want. You stop being derailed by other people's psychological problems, personal crises, and emotional manipulation, and you start using your understanding of psychology to create better outcomes for everyone involved. You stop being a victim of social dynamics and start being an architect of social dynamics. This is not about becoming cold, calculating, or inhuman. It is about becoming strategically sophisticated while remaining genuinely human. You can still experience the full range of human emotions: joy, sadness, anger, fear, excitement, disappointment. You simply choose when, where, and how to express them based on what will be most effective for achieving your goals and serving the people you care about. You can still form genuine connections with people, experience real intimacy, and engage in authentic relationships. In fact, your relationships become deeper and more satisfying because you understand the psychological mechanisms that create and maintain those connections. You know how to build trust systematically, how to create emotional safety consistently, and how to navigate conflicts constructively. The goal is not to manipulate people for selfish gain, though you will certainly advance your own interests more effectively. The goal is to become someone who can navigate any social hierarchy, handle any interpersonal challenge, and influence any group dynamic in directions that create value for everyone involved. You become a force for order in chaos, clarity in confusion, and progress in stagnation. You learn to see social situations not as random emotional weather that happens to you, but as complex systems that you can understand, predict, and influence. You develop the ability to diagnose group dynamics, identify the real power structures beneath the official ones, and position yourself strategically within any social ecosystem. Strategic emotional control is ultimately about taking complete responsibility for your own psychological state and your impact on others. Instead of being tossed around by emotional currents like a piece of driftwood, you learn to swim powerfully in any emotional waters. Instead of being shaped by social forces beyond your control, you learn to shape social forces according to your vision and values. Instead of hoping that people will treat you well and getting disappointed when they do not, you learn to create conditions where treating you well serves their interests and becomes their natural choice. This mastery does not happen overnight, and anyone who promises you quick emotional transformation is selling you fantasy. It requires consistent practice, careful observation, and continuous refinement over months and years. You must study yourself as carefully as you study others, noticing your own emotional patterns, triggers, blind spots, and unconscious reactions. You must experiment with different approaches, measuring their effectiveness and adjusting your methods accordingly. You must be willing to make mistakes, learn from failures, and gradually build competence through deliberate practice. But the investment is worth it because emotional mastery is the foundation of all other forms of power and success. Physical strength can be overcome by superior strategy or technology. Financial resources can be depleted through poor decisions or changing circumstances. Technical skills can become obsolete as industries evolve and technologies advance. But the ability to understand, influence, and direct human psychology remains valuable in any context, any culture, any historical era. Human nature does not change. People will always have emotions, always operate according to psychological principles, always respond to certain types of influence, and resist others. The person who understands these timeless patterns and can apply them skillfully will always have advantages over those who remain emotionally illiterate. When you master strategic emotional control, you do not just climb existing social hierarchies more effectively, you transcend them entirely. You become someone who creates value wherever you go, who solves problems others cannot solve, who builds bridges others cannot build, and who generates opportunities that others cannot even see. You become indispensable not because people fear you or depend on you, but because they recognize that their lives and work genuinely improve when you are involved. This is the true power of emotional mastery. It makes you not just successful, but genuinely valuable to others. It makes you not just influential, but worthy of influence and respect. It makes you not just respected, but genuinely respectable. And in a world full of emotional chaos, interpersonal dysfunction, and psychological manipulation, these qualities make you not just powerful, but truly irreplaceable. The choice is yours, and it is a choice you make not once, but every day through your responses to the emotional challenges life presents. You can continue to be buffeted by emotional storms, controlled by psychological manipulation, and limited by social dynamics you do not understand. You can remain reactive, defensive, and at the mercy of other people's emotional states and psychological problems. Or you can begin today to learn to master these forces, to use them strategically, to become the kind of person who shapes reality rather than merely reacting to it. You can develop the skills that will make you emotionally autonomous, socially sophisticated, and psychologically powerful. You can become someone who brings order to chaos, who creates solutions where others see only problems, and who builds bridges where others create divisions. The path is clear, the methods are learnable. The only question is whether you have the commitment and discipline to walk this path consistently. Until emotional mastery becomes your natural way of being in the world, the tools are here, the principles are clear. The only question is whether you have the discipline and commitment to transform yourself from an emotional amateur into a strategic master. The world is waiting for your answer, and it will be given not in words, but in the quiet power of your presence and the undeniable effectiveness of your influence.